I think it's multi-layered. It's something that is all-consuming to a level that you look up and the time is passed on the clock and you have no idea where it's gone. But more importantly, I think it's something that everyone can resonate with on some level. There is some piece of it that is different for every person that makes them feel seen, that is rarely captured.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tales of Our Time. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, comics, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read. Or listen for today's show. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens. And joining me today is a very special guest, my sibling, Jessica Stevens. Hey, Jessica.
Hi, as Amanda said, my name is Jessica Stevens. I am 28 and I use air pronouns.
Welcome to the show. Jessica is joining us from phone. So is there anything that you would like to say to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am a human that has a long love of reading and a very short attention span. So most of my consumption has turned to audiobooks and specifically podcasts.
I mean, you and I also kind of grew up listening to audiobooks. That was what we did a lot. As kids, our whole family was like, anytime that we had to take a road trip, we would go to the library, pick up a book that we wanted to read in an audio format, and then the whole family would listen to it traveling around, sometimes at home.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I remember a couple Christmases where our Christmas presents were a new Walkman and the latest version of Harry Potter on tape.
But actually, I think by that time it was Discmans. We only had one Walkman. It was our dad's.
I think it had just transitioned.
Yeah, it was our dad's, and we kept stealing it. And so they bought us our own Discmans.
We did.
That's what I remember.
I do remember that, actually. It was supposed to be his fancy Christmas present, and I don't think it lasted like a week before we stole it.
Yeah, it was just so cool.
All right. Was.
Anyway, getting out of that nostalgia hole, what story have you brought for us today?
So today I have brought one of the most singularly impactful stories I have ever engaged with. It is an actual play D&D podcast from the MacElroy family, which if you're familiar with podcasting, you might know they're a little bit of a monolith. But it is the Adventure Zone, specifically the first story arc they did, the Balance arc, and specifically the Stolen Century of that story.
Right. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, a real, it is a lot like what it sounds like. A real play D&D podcast is when you listen to a group of people play Dungeons and Dragons. And if you're also unfamiliar with that game, the quickest way to summarize it would be that it is like a cooperative storytelling game in which everybody works together, playing individual characters to tell an interesting story. So the Adventure Zone is kind of like a long series of stories. Their first one that they ever did was called the Balance arc, and even that is broken up into 8 smaller arcs. And so today, Jessica is going to be talking to us mostly about the penultimate one, the second to last one. But before that, I thought it would be helpful, if you don't mind, Jessica, if I give a summary of the overall story, and then you can go ahead and give a summary of your favorite, I guess it would be easier for us to talk about it in terms of, seasons.
Yeah, I think it is most helpful to think of it as seasons or maybe chapters.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and get started. This is kind of fun. So the Adventure Zone podcast, this first Balance arc, there are 3 main characters. There is Taco Taco, the wizard. There's Magnus Burnsides, who is a fighter. And there's Merle Highchurch, who is a cleric. And if you don't know, a cleric is kind of like a magic user that also fights, and their magic is usually related to their belief in a higher power. It's not always a god, but sometimes it is. And these three characters are going around the land of Faerun. They become adventurers, and they quickly get scooped up into an organization that's called the Bureau of Balance. And while they're at the Bureau of Balance, they're working to gather these magical artifacts that are extremely powerful and very destructive. In doing so, they travel to many different dangerous situations to recover them. They get these artifacts and they take them back to the Bureau of Balance where they are supposedly destroyed. Along the way, though, they slowly start to doubt their organization's motivations and eventually turn on them when they realize that the organization, the Bureau of Balance, is not actually destroying these artifacts, but using them together to try and defeat an even greater evil. The reason they turn on them is because of some hanky-panky business involving memory wiping, where they realize that these three adventurers actually knew each other before in previous lives and have been lied to up until this point to get them to do these things. But ultimately, they decide to once again work together as friends and with their friends in the Bureau of Balance to defeat the greatest evil, which is known as the Hunger. That's the shortest way that I can summarize it. There's a lot that happens. The story took place over 3 years. But the chapter that Jessica is going to be going into today is the second to last chapter, which is them remembering all of their past lives, called The Stolen Century.
It is. And it is my favorite arc, I think, out of the entire story. The Stolen Century deals primarily with the meta-narrative that's been happening during the entire podcast, and it tells of how 100 years ago, they set out on an adventure to map and explore the interplanar system and how they encountered the adversary, the Hunger. By the time a year is up, they sort of do a Groundhog Day reset to the beginning of a new year in a new plane.
You're right, it is a
and the
Groundhog
pursuit
Day.
that happened for 100 years. But most importantly, I think in this story, we learn more about a really key character, Lucretia, and some horrible, horrible choices she makes.
Do you think you
And
could detail those for us? I feel like you're going to
for
want to
sure.
talk about them later.
Oh, absolutely. So Lucretia finds out that they can use these jellyfish, they call them void fish, to eat memory, which she had done on the plane that our story takes place
In Faerun.
to keep knowledge of they're called the 7 grand relics, out of the hands of people and to try and mitigate the damage they had done. But prior to all of this, Lucretia, just as a character, is very quiet and very people-pleasing. And for the first, I want to say it's 50 years or so of the adventure that they're on, she is very quiet and very subdued and very background. But she has an encounter about 50 years in where every other character that has gone on this adventure with her got captured and essentially killed. And she knows that as long as one person in the ship makes it out at the end of the year, everybody can come back in that Groundhog Way situation. And it's absolutely a catalyst in her story and in her character evolution as well this year that she spends on the run from the parties that killed the rest of her friends and trying to keep their ship in the air and just keep everyone alive.
By surviving herself.
Surviving. There's a beautiful line when they end that specific section of that episode that says, after that day, Lucretia was different in a way that made everyone proud.
So
Yeah.
we both have a lot of feelings about this podcast, but what made it so meaningful to you?
Oh, gosh, there's a lot of layers for this specific arc. And it's a controversial arc, to be fair, because a lot of folks got a little frustrated that the gameplay mechanics were different, and it was very much just about storytelling.
Yeah.
But that is one of the things that made me love it, was that it is just cooperative storytelling. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, you got a lot of bombshells in there too. For example,
Mm-hmm.
one of the main characters, Taco, had an entire twin sister loop that
Yeah.
Lucretia completely erased the memory of. Nobody remembered Loop.
Right. Kind of
And
by
she was such
accident,
an
to be fair. To be
100% on
fair.
accident. Lucretia, she makes some really difficult choices at the end of this, and I'll get into that. But that was one that she would not have chosen to make.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, why don't you tell us about
uh,
Lucretia? Because it seems like she's really important to you.
so I would say she is because I think it can be I think everyone can relate to having to choose the best bad choice in a situation,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what happens. And Lucretia winds up in that position in a big way,
Mm-hmm.
um, where because she doesn't want her friends to get hurt, she chooses instead to wipe the story of their journey and make them forget that it's happening. And that's just about the biggest mistake she could have made. Um, it works, to be fair, but in the process, she alienates all her friends. She loses her chosen family of the last 100 years, and she winds up, again, pretty much completely alone.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also, it's a revisit to the year that she had to spend alone surviving. I
So,
love Lucretia because I can relate to making the best bad choice in order to save people you love.
well, I also would say it sounds to me like you also relate to her, or like you found, not relate, but like you found a lot of meaning in the fact that like she's somebody who very powerfully like restarts her life several times over, like and reinvents
I
herself into someone who is maybe not maybe not 100% the way that she wanted to be initially, but somebody who is stronger, more independent, and more able to face the challenges that she has in front of her.
absolutely. I think it's a moment of, you get the cliche, some people choose their destiny, some people's destiny chooses them. And it's absolutely one where she steps up to the plate
Hmm.
and she chooses to take the story into her own hands and start writing it with a purpose.
Well, that's a beautiful way to segue into the almost last question. Why do you think that this should be considered a tale of our time? The balance arc of not just your part, but I guess the overall story, the balance arc for the Adventure Zone.
There are so many moments in this arc that are just so deeply human.
Mm-hmm.
There's Lucretia's evolution and her mistakes and the being able to telegraph it so hard of, oh, this is a horrible choice. I understand completely why you made it, and also this hurts to watch. There are beautiful moments of joy. um there is one very specific line, um I believe in this one, where one of the main characters, Merle Highchurch, is talking to the adversary for a brief period of time, and he's asked the question of, why do you keep going when things aren't the way you want them to be and when things are hard? And
Is that what
the
the hunger
response,
asks Merle, or is that what
the
Merle asks
hunger,
the
sorry,
hunger?
that's what the hunger asks Merle after 80 some odd cycles, I think.
Hmm.
And Merle says he keeps going because he chooses joy.
Hmm.
And I think that's very powerful, that you wake up in the morning in the face of
Overwhelming odds.
overwhelming odds and monotony and the same thing again and again and again,
Hmm.
and you choose joy in the face of all of that, and you
Hmm.
choose the small moments, and I think that's so incredibly powerful.
That is. I mean, oh, man, that I forgot about that. But that is also another thing that happens a lot in that arc you chose. That is really powerful. That
Hmm.
them confronting like why have they kept going this entire
Hmm.
time. And I think yeah that I couldn't have said it any better. So to wrap this up, if you could give the Adventure Zone balance a one phrase subtitle, what would that be?
Make mistakes and choose joy.
Ah, I love it. Oh,
I was kind of proud of that one too, yeah.
you should be. Oh, man, that's so good. Make mistakes and
Thank
choose
you.
joy. It's also especially prudent given that a lot of the early ones are them. A lot of the early
Oh,
games are them making big mistakes, the first chapters, and the
oh,
latter
it
chapters
absolutely
are
is.
them like dealing with the mistakes they made when they didn't know how
It
to
it
play the game.
absolutely is. It's very satisfying.
So that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you for joining me, Jessica.
Yeah, happy to join you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me on.
I wish we could just keep talking about this forever, but unfortunately,
Oh, I mean, I'm happy to come back for other arcs.
I mean, don't tempt me. Do tempt me. Maybe we'll do it.
Hey,
So,
hi, let's talk about the suffering game.
oh my God, no. The one I want to talk about is the train heist at the train murder
Oh my God.
mystery,
Oh
which is
my
the
God,
second
yes,
arc.
Murder on the Rockport Limited. Yes.
Right. So as listeners can tell, there's a lot of different genres you can get into in this story. That story, once again, is the Adventure Zone Balance arc. So the Adventure Zone is a podcast. The whole story that we were talking about is the Balance arc. And actually, that one, we were talking about the podcast, but it is also available in a series of graphic novels that you could read as well. Thank you all for joining us on Radio Taiwan International. This has been Tales of Our Time. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, with my guest and incredible sibling, Jessica Stevens.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I hope that you all out there enjoyed learning about the Adventure Zone Balance. Make mistakes and choose joy. A tale of our time. And we'll see you next time.